Welcome, Week 2 videos NFL. He's Robert Ferringo. I'm Scott Spreitzer, and we are DocSports.com. We are going to be talking about the Falcons and the Cowboys Sunday, September 20th clash in the Big D on this report. First, quick note, if you've yet to become a member at DocSports.com and just want to give it a trial run, you get a free $60 account simply by clicking on the link below the video to get started, so check that out. Falcons at the Cowboys in Week 2. Dallas laying 7, totals 50. 64% on the tickets, or I should say 64% of the tickets are on the Atlanta Falcons plus the points. And Robert, I'm a little bullish on the Falcons. I mentioned that in Week 1. They do have a tough back-to-back start to the season because they play this game in Dallas after opening with a tough one at home against the Seahawks, where they're a 1-point dog at this point. Your thoughts on this Week 2 clash and the fact that they're coming out of the gates against a couple of decent opponents?
Falcons have a brutal schedule this year, and I expect them to play with a lot of focus and purpose earlier in the season. I live in the Atlanta area, so obviously just by default, I follow them a little bit closer than some of the other teams. You can feel the desperation around this entire Falcons team. Not only is their entire coaching staff coaching for their jobs really this year, but you can feel that if this team does not succeed this year, that they're going to enter a rebuilding phase, that there's going to be massive changes and a massive overhaul. And these guys have been together for a while. It wasn't that long ago that they were playing in Super Bowl. So I expect them to come out sharp. This feels like too many points to give Matt Ryan. I'm not as bullish on the Falcons this year as you are, in part because of that brutal schedule. But that's the thing. You got Matt Ryan. You got a top 10 quarterback. They're a really hard team to bet against week in and week out when you got a guy that can put up 450 yards and 3 or 4 touchdowns. So feels like too many points. That's why you see the lopsided action. Normally the Cowboys are getting over 50% of the action in pretty much any game. You know, America's team. They got that big public team. So it's a little bit surprising to see that the numbers are so skewed for Atlanta, but you touched on it. How does Atlanta perform against Seattle in Week 1? How does Dallas perform on the road against the Rams in Week 1? And that's going to decide if this number comes down or could shoot even higher.
And you know what, you made a good point when you talked about this is almost a desperate season for the Falcons in the sense that, you know, they started so badly last year. They did come on over the final 9 games. But I think that Super Bowl appearance did buy Dan Quinn some extra time. Besides the fact that I like Dan Quinn. Every player wants to play for him. They play hard for him. But still, you've got to produce, and you can't hang your hat on a Super Bowl appearance for 3, 4, 5 years down the road if you're not getting back to the postseason. I did mention this in Week 1, and I wanted to mention again for those who didn't see those. You know, you look at those last 9 games, Atlanta wins 6 out of 9. They allowed less than 20 points per game. They shaved off a couple touchdowns per game in those final 9 games. They were excellent against the pass. They really clamped down on the defensive side of the football when Dan Quinn kind of passed the reins a little bit and didn't do all of the defensive coordinating duties and play calling over those final 9 games. And remember, they had 23 sacks in those last 9 games. They gave up 11 touchdown passes and had 10 interceptions. So if they can carry that momentum over from how they finished the season into this year, they can win some games early, which is extremely important, Robert, because you said, and I agree with you, if this team struggles and they don't make the postseason, as much as we like Dan Quinn, he's probably gone. And they cannot afford to start 0-2 as far as I'm concerned. Doesn't mean they can win this game or win against Seattle. The bottom line is, though, they start 0-2, and the doubt from last year's first 7 or 8 games starts creeping into their heads.
I'm going to be looking at the under in this game as well. 50 feels way too high for this game. For all the talk about the Cowboys' skill position players, they had a top 10 defense last year also. Dallas is a very strong defensive team. With Atlanta, their struggles, you mentioned last year the massive shift. They were giving up around 30 points a game first half of the season. Second half of the season, that dropped to around 18, 19 points a game. Okay, that's because Dan Quinn finally passed off defensive play calling duties to his defensive coordinator. Made a massive shift. The other issue with Atlanta over the last few years on the defensive side of the ball has been injuries. They have no depth. Atlanta's starting 22, okay, their 11 offense, 11 defense, has been as good and has been capable of playing with any team in football over the last few years. The problem for them is by week 10, when those injuries have piled up, their backups are below replacement level. So early on in the season, I expect Atlanta to be at full strength, and I expect them to play at a high level on both sides of the ball. I can see this being a closer game and a little bit lower scoring. I'd have to lean on the Falcons with the points right now, but I'm definitely looking at the under. One last thing that I want to throw out there about the Cowboys, okay? This is their issue. Who are the Dallas Cowboys now that Mike McCarthy is the coach? Because we've known exactly who they are for the last 10 years. And here's the stat that is perfectly emblematic of who they've been. Since 2010, in their last 156 games, the underdog in Dallas Cowboy games is 93-63 against the spread. Underdog has been cleaning up. If you just blindly bet the underdog in every Dallas Cowboy game over the last 10 years, you would have cleaned up against the house. So are they going to continue to be one of those shaky teams, untrustworthy in that favorite role? Or are we going to see the Cowboys finally tap into what seems like limitless potential?
Listen, I don't know if they factored this into the mix, but if Jason Garrett was still there, I make this line 4.5, 5. I really do, for all the reasons that you just mentioned. When they're expected to win, they don't.
Losers.
That's part of the reason that underdog spread, situation or trend situation in their games has paid off so well. He's Robert Ferringo. I'm Scott Spreitzer. If you want to grab that free $60 account to get Doc Sports a trial run, just click on the link below the video and check out all our Week 1 and Week 2 NFL videos. We are DocSports.com.